Panelists today are Ida Sim, Matt Lungren, and Nigam Shah. Ida Sim is a professor of medicine at UCSF and co-founder of OpenM Health, a nonprofit organization that is breaking down barriers to mobile health app and data integration. And she's also director of UCSF Berkeley Computational Precision Health Initiative. Panelists, if you're mic'd, you can go ahead and take your seats. Matt Lungren is the Chief Medical Information Officer at Microsoft Nuance and an associate fellow at the Amy Center and an instructor of a popular Coursera course on AI in medicine. And Nigam Shah, you heard from earlier, professor of medicine and biomedical data science, chief data scientist at Stanford Healthcare, and a co-director of the Amy Center. And I'm Kurt Langlotz. I introduced myself earlier. I'm going to join the panel. Thanks for being here. So I think that is a great segue. We know from the work that Eric and others have done that these models are incredibly capable. They pass licensing exams. They can summarize and explain all kinds of medical concepts. So I wanted to ask each of you, what do you think are the applications of these models that are ready for clinicians to use today, right out of the gate? Ida.
Thank you, Kurt, and so such a pleasure to be here. I'm a primary care physician, which means that I suffer the pain points of trying medical record and taking care of patients and sort of the data inundation. I would say the pain points that I can see these technologies helping right now are two. One is certainly documentation, that burden that keeps me up at night, completing my notes. There are companies like Nuance and others that are really, I think we're ready for that. And that's a really important pain point because of physician burnout. So that I think is a clear win. The other one I would say, I'm not sure if it's really ready for prime time yet, but my other pain point as I practice is situational awareness. And you can think of that as when you're on the battlefield or you're in the ER or in the OR, you would think, wow, you need to know what's going on. Well, we have that same need in primary care. Maybe it's the time frame is a little longer, but we do need to know what's going on. I find I have a really hard time with that. I have patients who are very sick, multiple problems, and I hunt and peck. I think that was a term I got. I hunt and peck. And then I have to build that mental model of what's going on with my patient. So the last thing I want from the computer is a prediction that is actionable, that tells me what I need to do without understanding what the heck is going on. So the first thing I need is what the heck is going on. So that's the pain point. I don't know how close we are to that, but I love your thoughts about the foundational electronic medical record model and the timeline view. That's what we need. Let's get away from the textual summary. I need something that fits my cognitive model so that I can be a good partner and the AI can be a good partner with me. Don't tell me what to do. Tell me what's going on.
Yeah. So in a word, summaries, right? But in a different way than we normally.
In a very, very different way. Really in a cognitive. It's a cognitive alignment, and every single one of us as clinicians. And if we broaden that out to care providers, that includes nurses, that includes the social worker, that includes the patient, it includes the patient's family. Let's think about who is doing the care. It's not me. It's not me. So we need to align cognitive models of both the person who's doing the actual care and the machine that's supporting, right? It's really augmented intelligence. So I guess we could call it a summary. I think I have a much more example of a summary.
Matt.
Yeah. I agree 100%. I think I'll turn the clock back about a year. I along with Eric, I was fortunate enough to get access early and had a very similar sort of stay up all night, OMG, what's happening? I pushed the model in my specialty, which is very specialized. I'm a pediatric interventional radiologist. Like, how would it possibly know, that subdiscipline of medicine? And then my mind kept going towards all the things that it could predict. It could offer clinical support, could even do history of future illness. I think Russ brought that up. But then I realized that what it's really great at, as we enter this co-pilot era, as you saw the launch of Microsoft Word with Copilot, Excel, and PowerPoint, and Outlook, is that this thing is really, really good at taking information and treating it as something that's dynamic, meaning that it's something that's giving you what you need when you need it, based on what is essentially kind of an organized mess of information. That's sort of what you were talking about. And I sort of look at this as almost an expectation. So, if we're in our, I practice still going to my clinic, and I have all these co-pilots for all the other things that I do in my daily life, my email, and then I turn to other applications that are in healthcare and they don't have that capability, it's going to be even more of a gap than ever before. So I think that low-hanging fruit, and again, it's not a small amount of effort, right? I think we just saw the survey recently, 15 hours a week, physicians spend on average with these kinds of repetitive hunting and pecking email administrative tasks. If we could just take that off the top without having to take these models to med school, as Nigam is proposing, I still think we can provide a lot of benefit. And then delivering that responsibly into practice. So I really do look at those, I would almost call them boring from a research or a scientific perspective, but so transformative in an odd way from the daily life that we live.
Do you think that's ready today?
I think it's about as ready as I've seen any technology before. Yeah.
Nigam.
So I think we're confusing what the technology could do with what it should do. 100%. These generative capabilities, summarization, question answering, and just de novo, creating a paragraph that did not exist before. They're groundbreaking, like from a technology standpoint. I think we've seen a quantum shift in what's possible. But that's existential proof for a bit. We need to test things before using it in clinical care. From a legal standpoint, and we have a lawyer in the mix here, I don't think any of these things are ready. Is it a laboratory test? Is it a practice management software? Is it a therapeutic? Is it software as a medical device? Like, we don't even know what regulatory regime this falls under. And you brought that up in the past. Like, how does generative AI fit in the existing paradigm? And until we sort that out, I don't think it is kosher to say it is ready for clinical use. I think it's ready for testing, 100%. And we need to start thinking about what are the experiments that we should be designing, the equivalence of RCTs, the equivalence of prospective testing, block randomization, you name it. But what is the proof that we need to generate so that we confidently say this is ready for prime time? And I don't think we've put in that effort yet as a community.
It's a
Can
great.
I respond to that?
Please.
Yeah, I absolutely think we need to do in parallel a evaluation. I think we need to be thinking far beyond randomized trials. We need to be thinking about real-time evidence using all the novel methods that we have, causal inference, managing confounders, all that kind of stuff. I think we can do this in parallel. I think we need to field these technologies in ways that bound risk, but we need to start exploring these in real time, in real life now. The pain points of documentation, it's not going to wait. It's just not going to wait, for a randomized trial. And, industry is going to do it. They're going to sell it to health systems. And we need to we need to be there and do it in a way, absolutely agree with evaluation. So let's do it.
Yeah, and I'll also add, I agree with that. I think for a lot of the clinical decision support, when you start wading into that side, definitely, right? I think no one's arguing that. But if you're talking about responding to an inbox message and there's a human in the loop, I'm able to review that, or it's a patient visit summary. That's, because we're not creating data that's really meant for patient consumption. In fact, we barely make it for physician consumption, right? It's a billing exercise in a lot of cases. And to sort of make that purpose fit for the user so that we can affect better care, I think that there's that human in the loop really provides that capability. Now, when you start talking about, again, some of the history of future illness, give me a differential, give me the test I should order. Yes, I don't think anyone's arguing that point, but I guess I just feel maybe it's just some bit of comfort knowing that If it can summarize something and I can evaluate the accuracy as the clinician that in the loop, I feel okay with that.
So what I'm hearing from the panel is that there's maybe a spectrum of risk. And on the one hand, we've been Googling from the radiology reading room for a long time. That's never gone through FDA clearance as far as I know.
We're being too.
Good point. Eric, also. And yet, on the other hand, if you have something that's creating a differential diagnosis for a physician, that's obviously a whole different realm. And perhaps we need different levels of assessment, and where the threshold for regulatory clearance happens isn't really decided yet. Yeah, fair enough. And I guess that kind of dovetails to our next question. We've heard about the gaps. And so what do you think are the risk areas? So as we get to that end of that spectrum, where are we exposing ourselves and our patients to problems by adopting these models too early? And will things like explainable AI help us, help these systems work in better partnership with humans? Nigam.
So I think about risks on 3-4 dimensions. There's technology risk, there's market risk, there's business model risk, there's legal risk. I think we're over-indexing on technology risk. That explanations can help alleviate technology risk and the problem that it produces a factually wrong response or something of that nature. There's still market risk, as in, what are we going to do with it that has value? And then if that has value, do we have a business model to capture that value? So for example, we talk about documentation use cases all the time. But let's say I freed up 2 hours of my physician's time from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. You get no net new revenue, zero. And I'm not making this up, zero revenue. So there is, like, business model wise, there's a disconnect here. Like, absolutely, to make the quality of the experience of the physician better, yes, we need that. But it will net increase the cost of care. So, like, yeah, explanations in my mind are like way down the value chain. Like, if we really want to drive adoption, we need to start testing like now. Massively parallel, multi-site, done and designed in a way that we can prove that these things are safe and effective. And then second, we figured out a way to fit it into the ecosystem. Explanations, in my mind, like, they may have a role in certifying any of these value props, but not the first on my mind.
I know.
Yeah, I think, over several decades here that I've been involved with Stanford, did my PhD across the street here with lots of people in this room, actually. We always talk about explanation and how doctors want explanation from our AI systems. And I've always why? What is it that we're really trying to get at when we say these systems need to be able to explain themselves? I think the question here is really about trust. We want the doctors to trust the system. And I want to be, and this dovetails from the previous panel, the system doesn't have trust as an inherent feature. Trust isn't something that's inherent to a system. What's inherent to a system is its trustworthiness. How worthy is it for a human to give it trust? So if we think about a human, it could be a clinician, could be a patient, could be a nurse, could be a social worker, what does it take for me to trust something? What does it take for me to trust someone, right? And I was talking to Andrea, which is really nice to catch up with her. There she is. And I said, what is an operational definition of trust? Because that's what we're really after here. And I heard one, which I think I really liked, which is that you need to be confident that it is predictable. And I would say it is predictable in its goals and its action, and the goals align with mine, and that I know those goals are real. They're not a fake goal, and that it will behave according to those goals in a way that I can predict and be comfortable with. Now, maybe it can explain it to me. Maybe it can, give a little generative summary. But at the end of the day, it's, do I trust it, and what does it mean for me to trust the system? So I don't think explanation is the right question. It's really what is it? What is it?
It's a great point, and making an analogy to the world of pharmaceuticals.
Exactly.
There are some pharmaceuticals we have a very clear idea of why they work, and there are others we have no idea why they work. We just empirically have a lot of evidence from maybe a clinical trial or something else that says, okay, this works, therefore we trust it, but it's a black box.
Yeah. Most of the therapies that I prescribe.
So one of the high blogs is on should AI models be explainable? And we break it down into a Venn diagram. One of it is trust. The other is just the engineering explanation. Like, how does this work? So if it goes wrong, we can diagnose it and fix it. And then the third is a little bit slippery slope, which is sometimes people ask for an explanation, assuming that by knowing the explanation, they'll understand causality and can take mitigating action. So it's a Venn diagram of engineering, explanation, trust, and causality. And then that gives you 7 zones, and you have to know exactly where you're landing in order to ask for an explanation.
Yeah, I think, a couple of responses. I think on the issue of explainability, I think from the computer science side of things, you definitely kind of want to know what's happening. I think we've kind of abandoned that. And anyone,
that's the engineering explanation.
Anyone who confidently feels that way, I question them. But I think, we can just use a simple example. So if you look at working with, OpenAI's ChatGPT interface versus the Bing chat interface, where it is providing you links and you can actually say, okay, well, it's saying this, I can actually look at where it's pulling that from and verify for myself. That's a term called grounding, at least is one way to look at that. And what's really interesting about a lot of the discussion just generally is we're only scratching the surface. I mean, we're really using these models in a very one-dimensional way, right? We've already heard of seeing things like AutoGPT. We've seen groups like the Cure group, which has used different bots that interact with each other. Actually, they're incredibly good at fact-checking themselves, right? So I think on the issue of explainability, I think if you're looking at this from a clinical context, if I feel comfortable with what it has created, or if there's a question I have, I want to be able to say, where does that, let me look and see what it said that medication does. Let me just see, okay, fine. I'm seeing that, it's pulling up the area where it pulled it. Cool, I'm going to approve that. And now we're going to get on the topic of saving time. Yes, I don't earn any RVUs between 8 and 10 p.m., but I'm also a much happier person when I go into work the next day and I am not staying up all night documenting. And I think it was a Stanford study that said, is it $1 million to replace the physician on average?
Yeah, something like that.
It's a lot of money. Now, it's hard to prove to a CFO that, preventative financial. But I think in general, what we see is a massive crisis in burnout. 67% physicians are burned out. If you ask any of your colleagues, if you're physicians in the room, a lot of us are going to leave within 5 years. And so I think we're in a place where we are at a healthcare crisis that needs to be addressed. And I think most healthcare systems are feeling that pain. And so if we can save that 15 hours a week, even if it's not billable, I would argue it's worth it.
100% it's worth it, but we got to align the technology with the user, with the market, because otherwise adoption will peter out. Like right now we have a nice hype and we got to ride that to something useful.
The health system, one of the top challenges, if you look across health systems, what they're saying is their major challenge, it's staffing.
Mm-hmm.
It's staffing.
But it's labor shortage.
It's how to use your labor in a way that maintains, your staff as being engaged. So yes, it is absolutely aligned with key business goals.
I mean, you put a system like this, and I have 2 choices for jobs. I'm going to go with the one that has that. I mean, I'm just telling honestly, right? I mean,
So I wanted to go to Slido for a question. This is actually the top ranked question for some time now. Liability for the use of these models in healthcare. Will it be on the physician? Will it be on the software provider? What about when it becomes the standard of care? How should we think about these questions? And if you want to punt, I have an answer that I would like to provide as well. Yes.
I'm waiting for the next panel, so I'm punting.
I guess this is the next panel, perhaps, right?
Let's flip the next panel back.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would just make the point that this many uses of these models are forms of decision support. And we have been doing decision support in medicine for decades. And in fact, if you look at the alerts, drug interaction alerts, drug allergy alerts, those have been happening, and other forms of alerts happening in electronic records for a long, long time. And a vast majority of those actually in the inpatient setting are rejected by the physician. And yet we don't see this kind of wave of liability. And if you look at some of the research in this area, it often is the case that juries, lay people, patients, what they really want is the physician to make the best decision based on all the information. What book they read, what course they took, all the information in the medical record, whatever popped up, whether they agree with it, disagree with it, consider all that information to make the best decision according to the standard of care. So I'm not sure that there's a fundamental difference just because this is really fancy technology between the kind of decision support that we might get, although there may be some issues as to whether the physician would trust it more, and that might lead to some potential issues. Okay, we'll let the next panel disagree with me on that.
I want to
go ahead.
Maybe just one point of that.
Yeah.
And I'll throw this forward to the next panel. When is it going to become unethical not to use these?
Yeah.
When am I going to get hauled in front of a jury because I did not use these tools and I missed something?
I think when it becomes standard of care and how we make it
And
there.
how do we know when we're there?
All right, we have 7 minutes left. So now it's time to imagine far into the future. Okay, we've talked about what is it possible to do today. I want to get your thoughts on, let's look 10 years down the road and how do we think these models might be used by Nigam?
10 years is too far out.
Okay, why don't you pick
I mean, last year, we didn't know GPT-4 would come out. I mean, come on.
you pick your horizon.
So, 6 months, 1 year, maybe. Beyond that, who knows? I would really hope that as health systems, we are set up to do agile testing to verify the purported benefits of these technologies. We can't wait for RCTs. We can't wait for salespeople to just beat down things over a 36-minute, meetings, 18-month cycle. We got to be proactive. As health systems, as physicians, as scientists, we sat out EHRs and we got Epic. Yeah. I rest my case.
10 years is way too far out. I'll take a stab at 3 years. I'll take 3 for 1,000. What I would like to see, I'm broadly calling sort of AI-driven virtual first precision care. And I think it's virtual first because right now, our model of healthcare is very reactive. It's very episodic. You get sick, you have a symptom, you come to me. And, that's not the way to do it. It's not serving our community. It's not acknowledging that we're getting older, all of us, and we're having more morbidity. Healthcare costs are going to go up. We really need to repivot, focus more on prevention, focus more on enabling people to do self-care. So we need to have a virtual first stance, and it should be precision. It should be customized to each individual. That's where these models come in. That's we're talking large language models, but there's a lot more in computing besides large language. So I think I would love to see that as our approach, where we go out to where our patients and the community and the families are, that we're there as a health system with them, supported by the right technologies in a safe way. And to the extent that they need to come see us in clinic, to the extent they need to come see us inpatient or in the ICU and tertiary blah, blah, blah care, that whole pipeline of care is streamlined and smooth for all the people who are working in that system. Again, the clinician, doctor, the nurse, the social worker, the patient. That's what I would like to see. I don't know that it'll be there in 3 years, but I would love to see us move towards that kind of a vision within, sometime in the next.
So that links back to your first answer, really, which is this summarization. In other words, one of the strengths of our system is we have all this subspecialized care, but one of the weaknesses is when you go and see that specialist, that may be the first time they see you, and they're trying to sift through this record, and they need this kind of summary or whatever you want to call it to facilitate that continuum.
Yeah. We need situational awareness that's fit for purpose for each person in this system, and then the system itself overall needs that situational awareness. And so I think we now have the capabilities with big data, with technology, large language models, foundation models, to start to make that a reality, because we don't have that. We're always behind. We're always behind. So that's sort of my operating vision right now. Talk to me later. I'm sure it'll look different.
Well, and if that were to happen, what do you think a clinic visit would look like with a patient?
I don't care about clinic visits.
Okay.
And it's not about healthcare. We talk a lot about healthcare. Why are we talking about healthcare? We should be talking about health. And healthcare is part of that solution. It's community care. It's public health. We heard with this pandemic, it's not just about what you see with your doctor or in the ER or hospital. It's how we take care of health as part of the fabric of how we live. That's where I would like to see us pivot to. And the clinic, quote unquote, visit, will change, however that changes to be part of this.
Matt?
Yeah, 3 years. I used to feel like that's a safe time horizon. I'm not sure it's safe. I'm going to go with like a year. So yeah, I think there's two things I'd like. I guess I'm predicting. We'll see. One is, I think, to your point, I think we're going to start to eliminate what is kind of a rampant information asymmetry problem that we have. Right? We speak a certain language to our clinician colleagues. We speak a different language to our patients. We're probably not always the best translators for that. And that kind of ties into something that I mentioned earlier, which is the data, I love the embeddings concept that Nigam brought up, but can we use that for the right audience, right? So, and I use radiology as a great sort of example. We have a complex MRI, for example. Now, a surgeon, a patient, a primary care doc, and even a fellow radiologist would all have different questions and information that they want from that data, right? That imaging data. And to be able to provide that information to that person in the, perspective or the context that they need, I think that's a really powerful idea. And I think that's certainly within the grasp of a lot of the technology we've been playing with. And I think for the patient side in particular, being able to collate data and interact, let's say chat with your own medical record, pretty powerful, profound thought to me. I would like to do that. And I think, again, these time horizons become very collapsed, I think, in this world that we're currently experiencing. But I do feel like that's something worth driving towards, because, again, I feel like a lot of the challenges that we find with patient care, preventative care, all the things that we brought up, is often this information asymmetry, this communication barrier, this inability to provide you the information the way you want to consume it.
All right, that's a great point to end on. Panel, thank you for the illuminating conversation today. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.